that Robyn Wolkofsky needs no introduction. She is Memory Movement Charlotte's longtime physician's assistant. She was part of the initial team that started the practice, and she's one of the few who now remembers, we can say, all three offices. Robyn was inspired to join then Memory Center Charlotte because she lost her grandmother to dementia and knew firsthand the need for care for the entire family and the need to break down the fear and misunderstanding that surround this disease. A native of Cranford, New Jersey, Robyn graduated from Penn State University and worked as a registered dietitian before earning a Master of Science degree from the Physician Assistant Program at Duke University School of Medicine. She and her husband, Evan, have 3 children, Brooke, Ryan, and Jessica, and they enjoy cooking, watching a lot of ball games, and game night with friends to re-energize her for work. It is also my pleasure to introduce a longtime partner to Memory Movement Charlotte, Kelly Markowitz. Kelly is a physical therapist and owner of Wise Transitions. She specializes in evaluating each client's level of function and current living situation to make recommendations for aging in place or to help determine next steps. Her services include home safety evaluations, check-in visits, client advocacy, and care management, as well as face-to-face referral services to various independent, assisted, and skilled living communities. In addition to these transitional care services, Kelly also provides in-home individualized physical therapy to those who no longer qualify for home health PT and are not yet prepared to begin outpatient services, as well as clients on day of hospital discharge to ensure a seamless transition from hospital to home. Kelly is a 1987 graduate of the Medical University of South Carolina with a Bachelor's of Science degree in physical therapy. She's a member of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Aging Coalition and serves as secretary on the board of the Council on Aging. In addition, she's a certified aging in place specialist and has special interest in the areas of fall prevention, balance training, and home safety. The senior population holds a special place in her heart, and she cherishes every opportunity to interact.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tell you that I did give up my my secretary role, so that I passed the baton on with that. So I'm still kind of keep in touch with the Council on Aging, but it was a long run for a while. Was there anything else you want to say, Melanie, before I tell a little bit?
No, but if there's anything that I missed in that introduction, please feel free to add it because I'm sure I did. And welcome. We're so glad that you're here to talk about transitions.
Thank you. I am so happy to be here as well. And sitting next to Robyn is quite an honor. It was Robyn who really connected me with memory movement in the beginning. I knew an OT who was a friend of Robyn's, and I told her about what my plan was for my business. She connected Robyn and myself. I got to go sit in on one of Dr. Edwards' meetings with his clients and thought, wow, this is what I want to be a part of. The whole picture of supporting the family and the caregiver is what it's all about. So Robyn and I often will have coffee together, and we're going to solve all the problems of the world anyway. So this is a great way for us to share some of the things that we think about when we meet. Robyn, I would love it. We're kind of going to use this as a conversation, and we welcome any comments and certainly any questions, and we look forward to answering them for you. Robyn, I would love to hear a little bit about, when someone is diagnosed with a neurological disorder, what can we do next? Kind of what are the first things that might happen?
Thanks, Kelly, and thanks for joining me tonight. It's a lot of fun to go back and forth, and I'm glad everybody's here. Hope to cover some things that we hear during visits and we brainstorm in between visits to help. So keep your questions ready. So the diagnosis of a chronic and neurodegenerative disorder, like a memory or movement disorder, can be really jarring and unlike a lot of other illnesses that people encounter because there's not kind of a start date and an end date. This is a bit of a pivot and a change in journey and a change in what you might have expected the next years to hold. So it's a real adjustment, and being very unpredictable, and everyone's journey is so unique. We know that raises a lot of anxiety. Lots of people want to know kind of what is coming and what can we do to either slow this down or minimize the challenges. And so one of the things we can do is get together and really educate you and help empower you with information and addressing the initial concerns. And so processing a diagnosis like this takes some time. to adjust. And everybody's response is so different, including the patient and their loved one. People have different responses to news like that, but there is no wrong way to do it. Some people will need more information and start researching, printing everything they can find, reading every book, Googling, which we would highly recommend against, but finding some solid sources to look in can be helpful for those folks. There's other people who are very anxious and, lose a lot of sleep in the beginning. That's not uncommon. And also there's people who just kind of withdraw and need to kind of go into themselves and take some time before they're ready to open up about it or feel comfortable even talking to us about it at appointments. That can take time too. But one of the things that we encourage and we find most helpful is being a little more open with the people closest to you when you receive a diagnosis like this, because it is easier in the beginning to share than waiting so long that you feel like now there's so much to say. People want to walk this journey with you, and you've been there for other people throughout their challenges in life. And it really is a gift to be able to open up and tell people what you're struggling with, what you're nervous about, what's going on, and allowing them to be there for you. So we really encourage getting out in the open. And that lays the groundwork. And later, down the line, when additional hurdles may present themselves, you've already kind of let people be there for you and offer support. And also talking with close family and friends outside of your immediate circle can be very helpful. It's a completely personal decision, but the people that we see who feel most supported years down the line have allowed people close to them in their life to come a little closer. Because people around us tend to take our lead. They do not want to infringe, even if they kind of suspect that you might not be feeling well. They will take the hint and not intrude. But that can bring a distance that was unintentional, just to respect someone's privacy. And it can look like people are pulling back when in fact we haven't always thrown out the rope and allowed them to come closer, or given them permission to ask the questions or to express concern. Because they may be worried about our reaction to infringing on our privacy. So really, if we can kind of throw that out there, even if we wrote it, I don't know how to talk about this yet, I'm not ready, but I do want you to know I'm struggling with something. That may be enough for them to say, I'm here for you and you are ready. And that can be enough to lower some anxiety about sharing things. So it can be done in its own time, but I do encourage you at least to consciously think about the approach you'd like to take, because it can affect how supported you feel down the line. And one of the things that we're going to talk about in a little while is a visit we do at Memory Movement called a care plan. And we'll go into detail about that. But that visit can enable us time to sit back and talk in more detail about how you're handling this diagnosis, what are the main stressors, and help you strategize some things if you're looking to open up the conversation. So Kelly, I'd like to know, as you see folks on the other, in a different setting, I'm in the office, on the phone, online, but you're in the home and meeting with people face to face. So what do you see as some of the helpful ways to navigate this early transition of a diagnosis?
That's a good point. What you had mentioned about reaching out to your friends and family, I think it's great to find out who your supporters are. And when you're ready, to bring those people into the fold. As we've often said about this, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So we have to gradually get our support system around us, whether it's family or friends or our companion services, whatever happens to be. It's great to get those people around you. The other thing is finding the strengths of each family member. My sister's an accountant. I'm a physical therapist. She's the one handling the financial pieces. Don't ask me anything about that piece. I'm the one who handles more of the communication with the medical staff and those kinds of things with my parents. So the more analytical type people, they might be the people who are going to assess the situation and be able to kind of disseminate information to family. The more compassionate people are going to be able to take the read from others and then be maybe the communicator for the family. And of course, the people who are more financially oriented are going to be the people who are going to be taking more of the role, maybe making sure that the finances are taken care of. Sometimes I think that's sometimes one of our first clues into a problem is looking at maybe some late bills or those sorts of things that typically happen even early on. The other thing that we'll find is role reversals. And, you may have a husband who does all the cooking or a wife who does all the cooking. And sometimes that role becomes reversed. And I think it's important for family members to be able to support each other or find ways if we no longer have a cook in the house, then what are some ways that we can bring in nutritious meals? Is it a food service? Is it learning how to use DoorDash? Is it, a chef service? There are a lot of different ways. And there's also, friendship trays and Meals on Wheels. There's all sorts of services out there. It's just a matter of tapping into them, inertia, kind of moving towards a solving problem. Home obstacles, that is one of the big areas that I address when I come into somebody's home. And it can be anything from, is there a lot of clutter? Is there a cleanliness issue? What types of things can we put in place for safety? Is it grab bars? Is it adjusting a door frame so that a walker can get through it if that's the issue? Is it access? Many of my clients will say, we are set up, we live on one level, but there may be steps into the house. Your doorways in an older home may be only 24 inches wide, and a walker is much wider than that. A wheelchair certainly is too. Lots of different, sometimes people live in a split level house, or there are, stairs down into a living area. I've seen people who have elevators in their house, and that's really great. But if you have a safety issue with stairs, someone might not know to use the elevator, might not remember that it's available to them. So whenever I suggest people look at their home from a safety aspect, I would do it now. Even if you're a child of someone who has mobility issues, there's a part of aging in place that we talk about as universal design. And that refers to making a house accessible for your visitors, making it accessible for your child with the stroller, and with your son or daughter who has a baby and needs a stroller, to the kid in high school who fractures his ankle. So making a house visitable is part of that whole aging in place process. We did a bathroom in our house. We took out a tub and we put in a roll-in shower, walk-in shower. So it's an in-law suite for family when they come visit. So anytime you're doing a renovation, think about doorways that are 32 inches, wide at least. Just be thoughtful whenever you're doing any type of home improvement project, and certainly having someone look at the safety looking forward is a great idea. We talked a little bit about financial obligations and making sure those are being met. You might find a trusted family member or friend, and there's people who you can hire to be what they call daily financial managers. They do things like going over the mail and making sure bills are being paid and those sorts of things. Sometimes family doesn't like for family to be in their finances, so a third party might not be a bad idea. The password book, I think maybe Robyn, you've spoken about this before as well. I have one sitting right here that I've just started working on, making sure I have those passwords available to me. Always a good idea to know how to get into your bank accounts and those sorts of things, and making sure someone in your family is a trusted person who can handle those types of things. I think it's just kind of looking at the whole picture. To me, the most important things when someone is transitioning and what that transitioning is staying in the home is, do we have medication safety? Do we have nutritious meals? Do we have an accessible home? And do we have, services in place to meet everybody's needs? Robyn, you see the transitions too. What do you think are the most difficult transitions for people at this point?
Yeah, I think the things you spoke about are so perfectly in line with our take charge kind of philosophy, is looking at things with the big picture and saying, how can we prevent crises? Because the illnesses that we're dealing with, they tend to be very slowly progressive. But what can cause people to take a big dip in their independence are accidents, injuries, things that sometimes were preventable. And so by addressing these things head on and putting things in place to minimize risks, we can lead a life of more independence. That is our hope, for people to remain at home and be able to do all the things that they want to do. So a lot of the interventions Kelly's talking about are really to get ahead of things and prevent rather than waiting until there's an issue. Another transition that has diagnosis and making some modifications to current lifestyle is when to bring help in, additional outside help, such as a companion or an in-home aid. And those are really difficult for people to wrap their head around. That feels to a lot of people in their mind like a major loss of independence. And so oftentimes it is, we wait for quite a while, and we see caregivers that get to kind of the brink of breaking down and burning out. And we try to present this idea ahead of seeing that, because caregivers enter health crisis of their own, which takes them away from being able to provide care if we don't intervene sooner and minimize the stress a little bit. And so one of the things that we notice is that, people who care for someone or love someone in these situations are gradually taking on more and more of the home responsibilities over time. And it's kind of an invisible thing that usually, not at such an early age, people are now taking on the financials where they never had to before, taking on home maintenance, organizing the roof repair, making sure, when the trash can breaks, that somebody's coming in to replace it, fixing the garbage disposal, all these things, in addition to managing medications, making appointments with attorneys. These are all driving to appointments. They can kind of just pile up over the years. And before you know it, somebody is carrying a whole lot more on their shoulders than they were before. And they come and present like fatigue, sometimes depression, very high stress levels. And so when we really reflect about what's changed in the last years, they are carrying so much. So understanding that at some point, getting a break and pulling in some assistance can really preserve the health of the caregiver, which then can allow them to continue and keep people in the home. And so we like to, we want to make sure that people do not feel guilty. There's nothing, this isn't a burden that someone's trying to relieve themselves of. They're actually being proactive and taking some breaks and true respite. There are a lot of people out there that are trying to prevent falls. That falls is a big risk at home. And I see caregivers who every split second is spent looking around the house, making sure that somebody hasn't fallen. And if they go out for half an hour to the pharmacy, rushing back for fear that there has been a fall or there will be when they're gone. And so even a true break never ever happens because their stress is always on. They're on a fight or flight. I have to be the protector kind of mentality. And that is exhausting. And those stress hormones are doing their own damage in someone like that. So we want to help people understand that by bringing in some safety measures or companionship, whatever that might look like, whether it's a fall prevention pendant, a camera so you can kind of keep your eye on something while you're gone, or somebody to come and sit with your loved one or take them out to engage them a bit while you do run errands. If you know they're safe, you're much more likely to be able to take a deeper breath and take an hour break, a true break, and let your stress come down just a little bit. And that in itself is essential. It really is. And it's very hard to give that to yourself, but we know when it's needed and we really know the benefits. And also like weekend breaks, some people, it'll be years and years before they've gone away overnight. And those can be remarkably refreshing and can bring you back kind of ready to dive in. So having a weekend every, 4 or 6 months even that is coming can kind of lead the weeks leading up to that feel a little more doable. And we get a little refreshing if we can plan it and we can recruit some help. These are often things that are more realistic than we think they are. And so sometimes it takes some brainstorming, and I realize it's not always possible, but either mini breaks, an hour here, an hour there, or even an overnight can be very helpful and rejuvenating. We often need to be a little creative when bringing help in the home. Some people feel really hesitant about it, and we've had remarkably creative caregivers who have taught us a lot about the best ways to kind of fold people in to the household. We love people to become a little more like extended family than a very clinical care provider. So I was wondering, Kelly, if you could tell us a little more about what you see when, about the best ways to kind of weave things in.
Yeah, and I'll start with a story of one of my clients. So he is a gentleman who in the beginning years, he was still going to the club, he was still playing golf, he was still having a cocktail. He was still doing some things socially, but he was getting lost. Driving was a problem for him. So I have a trainer, and his sister-in-law lived here and had just moved here in town, did not have a job, met her, brought her into the fold, and she was just very intuitive about what he needed. She would go to the club with him. All the gentlemen at the club got to know her. She got to know them. And for several years, she was his driver, his companion, until he needed more skilled care. But the family just embraced her and took advantage of her being available, to him, and it has worked out really well. Gradually, we transitioned to a different set of caregivers because his needs changed. But I think two and a half years she was there, and it was just a matter of a little bit of training and helping her understand what his needs were. But it worked out perfectly. The goal, I think, is to hire caregivers for other roles in the beginning, a driver. I think Robyn has mentioned before, an administrative assistant, and also making that person feel that caregiver needs them. It can be a conversation like, hey, my friend Jane, she has a caregiver, or she has a person that they know that needs some work, and we could use a little bit of help around here. You think we could help her out by hiring her? Sometimes I love the idea of creating opportunities for exercise. If you can find a caregiver who can do those sorts of things. And as Thomas will know, I hire companies or I help families hire companies to provide care as well. And I really try to hire the person from that company, not a person to fill a slot. Now, in the beginning, it's very hard, and that's why I also like to find this help early on, maybe one day a week, so if you've established a relationship with someone before an emergency happens. But if you can describe what you need, provide somewhat of a schedule of what's expected, then that helps the people who are providing the employees determine who might be a better fit for you. And I think the more information you can provide, the better fit you're going to be able to have. But I love the idea of bringing in companion services before a lot of physical help is needed. And then, there may be some creative ways to bring people into your village that we're not aware of. And this might be in a good place to share those. Some of you may have experienced those circumstances where you have had one of the things Robyn and I talked about is families helping families. Is there a circumstance where two families can get together and provide respite for each other because they're kind of going through some of the same things? Drivers, just having transportation. This is your driver for the day. That's always a good way to bring a caregiver into the fold. College students, nursing students, I know they're out there. It's just a matter of finding them and being able to get them into the fold as well. I sometimes will hire two different companies to provide care because we can't quite get the right set for certain periods of time. I like the idea of families being able, if a spouse needs respite, sometimes their respite might just be staying at home and getting the house clean because that makes them feel good to be able to accomplish that one task, right? So being able to have a caregiver who can take your family member out to do something, to me, is really great. And it can be something as simple as going for a drive to get some ice cream, getting someone to go to Rock Steady Boxing. It can be going to the museum. I think the Bachelor had some special programs for people, particularly with dementias. I try to stay, engagement to me is my passion. And I think COVID showed us that not being engaged with others is very detrimental. So as I find things that are available, I try to make sure I let my clients know about them because I think just finding that creative outlet, I think, is important. There's also, of course, day treatment programs that are out there as well. There's some different choices, and it just depends on what your needs are as to whether or not that program is going to be appropriate for you or your family member. And the programs are never presented as, they're presented in a very dignified way, looking more at a senior organization, an exercise program, those kinds of things. And the other thing that I advocate is if your family member has a dental appointment and it's not important that you go to that dental appointment, then choose some of the companion services to help do those types of appointments so that when you do need to go to the cardiology appointment or the memory movement appointment, then you're there for that and you can kind of save your energies for those really important visits so that the eye doctor or not to say the eye doctor and the dentist are extremely important, but maybe you're not needed there as much as you would at the other visits as well. And then the other thing is planning next steps ahead of time. So if home becomes not the safest place for someone, then what are my next steps? So just kind of being ready for that. If it's ever needed, it may never be needed, but it's nice to know what is out there just in case. I know, Robyn, that sometimes I get referrals. I don't know if your care plans are always on Thursdays, but a lot of times I'll get phone calls on Fridays. So tell me a little bit about what your care plan process looks like and a little bit about how that looks at memory movement.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. And those were amazing examples. There was two or three other things I just wanted to add on to that as great ideas that I've heard. One is we always encourage people to put together, when you're starting to bring someone in from the outside, it's great to introduce them to your loved one as a full human who's been through a life, who has interests and hobbies and a family and a story. And so I encourage you to put together a little mini notebook about your loved one, some family photos, their preferences. These are things that you kind of get to know as you're with somebody and build rapport. But any tips and tricks you can give somebody to save them months of building rapport and bring that sooner and accelerate that, such as, Dad really doesn't like to be talked to from the other room. That's something that aggravates him. So please don't ever call from the other room. Please walk in and make eye contact before you talk. That's a personal preference that somebody wouldn't get to know. And it's very quick for someone to say, I didn't like that person, I don't want them to come back, when maybe we could have avoided that. Or if Dad's really into World War II history and they know that, they might be willing to, find a picture book of some World War II planes and kind of bring it over and say that they were doing a little of their own reading and they thought that they might, learn something from Dad. So these are ways that if they can tap into interests, it really takes away some of the kind of shooting in the dark about what might bring a connection, and you can really help that. And people feel good when there's connection.
Let me add to that, because before you go on, because Dr. Edwards, one of the things that he talks about is imprinting that person as well as a friend. So that's why I think getting this help as early is so vital, because you're not in a rush situation. You can gradually bring that person into the fold. One of the examples would just be, taking them out to lunch and saying, this is a friend of Doris's and, of your friend Doris, and Doris, this is my friend. So then you all become friends. So it's not just a caregiver coming in, you have become a friend before a caregiver.
That's right. And I had one family recently, it was so creative, but the daughter actually had somebody who already helped her and her kids. She helped her, I think it was a college student that drove her children after school. And that young lady didn't necessarily need more hours, but that was kind of the premise, that she let her mom know. Her mom was hesitant to allow anyone to help, but she said, Julie could use a few more hours than I can have her. I think I'm just going to let her kind of bring you to the grocery store once a week. Is that okay? And mom said, oh, that's fine. Julie needs the hours. I'd be happy to help. So kind of like Kelly said, it can be brought in from a lot of different angles. And I know sometimes creative storytelling doesn't feel so good to some folks. However, it can really get to the end goal, which is engaged, safe, independent folks who are stimulated, cognitively engaging with others and feel good about themselves. So it is worth a try for sure. Okay, so we want to explain a little bit. A lot of you I recognize from the office and have had a care plan visit before, but if it's been a while or if you haven't heard about it, a care plan is an office visit separate from the regular medical visits, and it is a Medicare covered benefit. So for Medicare recipients but you have to have some kind of cognitive impairment, whether it's mild cognitive impairment, dementia, memory loss, delusions or hallucinations. There's some kind of cognitive impairment as a diagnosis that qualifies you to have this particular visit covered. And it's an hour visit with our social worker and either myself or my colleague, Heather, our nurse practitioner, where we get to meet with very often the caregivers, but sometimes patient and caregiver. And we kind of step back and talk about the big picture. We talk about everything from making sure we have accurate contacts to understanding the current living and family situation, to clarifying the diagnosis. We ask, one of my first questions is, what have you heard us say is the diagnosis? Let's see if we're all on the same page. It's been a while since we had these real time for this conversation. And sometimes people really have questions. They thought they kind of knew, and then maybe our last office visit, we got on track with other things and they wanted to re-understand what the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia was, or the difference between tremor and Parkinson's was. So we really have time to talk about that. And then the other two really great questions are, what are your main concerns? And we try to strategize for those. And also, what are your goals? And I find that a lot of people have never really stepped back to think about, for the situation, what would be my goal at this time? Most people don't even realize you can have one. And we can't, we have to be realistic, but we can also just kind of vent what we hope for the situation. And then we go through advanced directive documents to make sure that if you don't have them, you know which ones to get and who can help you get them and complete them. We talk about any symptoms that are brewing. We discuss 7 safety issues. So that is, let's see if I can remember all of them. Medications, wandering, falls, driving, scams, stove, and firearms. And so we go through each of those and kind of assess where we are, because those are things that we can prevent in crises. So we really are there to give you strategies to address them. And then we talk about any help that's needed at home, resources, and caregiver stress. We kind of assess what supports are currently in place, what are the main stress points for caregivers, and what can we do to help and refer you to any more support. So it really is kind of the big picture. And at the end, we put it in a document and email it to you and to the primary care provider. And our goal is that you share that with just those immediately close to you that are helping care for this loved one that you have, but also share it if you have to take your loved one to the emergency room. What a great thing for that emergency room practitioner to see this and understand the big picture in a nutshell of what's going on and what are the stress points. Because oftentimes they're coming in without all of that knowledge, don't have time to get it all. And it could really be useful when they put together the plan. So cardiology office, same type of thing. So it's meant to kind of provide continuity, not only in the family, but on the healthcare team.
So who comes to that care plan, Robyn, did you say?
So the care plan visit, typically we see people, we give that hour to the caregivers, to care partners, as we call them often. The patient doesn't always come. And, sometimes the care partners or caregivers need some time to be able to talk about things that are difficult to talk about side by side with their loved one. However, early in diagnosis, when patients are quite independent, cognitively very aware, we encourage everyone to come together, because then patients can be empowered. We can open up conversations between someone and their loved one that often are difficult to bring up with each other. So, the earlier we start talking about things, the more likely it is that we're all in one visit and can really get things out in the open and allow patients to take a much more active role. In our society, there's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of difficulty in talking about things. So often we're at the point where a caregiver really needs to come by themselves and have some time to talk, but we work it out. And we also do them over video. So out of town, siblings or children can be on the line. And that again gives everyone the opportunity to hear it from us and to be able to ask their questions and get a little more support going in the family if needed. So we can work it out, and your medical team can talk about who would be appropriate to have at that visit, depending on your loved one's situation. You can ask the nurses or the physician or myself, and we can kind of help guide you of who should come. Okay.
Thanks,
Okay,
Robyn.
there was another question. Yeah.
Is this the time to transition to questions?
Yeah, I think so. We've covered a lot, so we'll pause in that.
We really have. Thank you.
Question.
So,
You mentioned a weekend break. I'm just curious as to what is your suggestion for having someone watch your loved one for a weekend break?
I can answer. I'm sure you have some examples too, Robyn. My family members just did that this weekend. As a matter of fact, she had a run out of town, and she had already bought one caregiver into the fold. Again, a good thing to bring someone in as a companion in early. She was coming just a couple of times a week for 4 hours. That individual kind of got a team of other caregivers together, and they were able to provide 24-hour care for the gentleman from Friday afternoon to Monday afternoon. And it all went fine. I was probably more nervous than the wife was about it. So, that is one way. Unfortunately, most memory care or even assisted living communities don't do weekend respite stays. It's usually a minimum of 2 weeks. And it can be, if you don't have private duty caregivers, you could also hire a caregiving company to do that as well. Again, starting early so they get to know the individual, and then they can provide 24-hour. Some caregivers can do a 24-hour stint. There's certain regulations and rules they have to abide by when it's a licensed agency. But you can do it. Someone can sleep there for 24 hours, and then the next person can sleep there for 24 hours as well. So it just kind of depends on what the situation is for each person.
And I'll just add to that. There are agencies, and then sometimes piecing it together with, like, for instance, if there's local friends or family, sometimes it's easier to go away a couple of days during the week when there are activities to do, or if someone is in an adult day program, and then, a loved one, a local family member maybe could pick them up after that, have them for the night, and then in the morning they can re-engage at the program. And so that's kind of other options. Or some people are okay during the day by themselves and they need someone to come just stay at night or check in a few times. So it's very individual, but sometimes just thinking of potential options can really pay off, even if it's a few months down the road.
So I understood you to say, one caregiver can only stay for 24-hour period, and then you switch to another one?
No, I'll let.
If you hire them through a company?
Yeah, if you go with the company, I think they have to have, they can, and some companies will do it, some will not. I'm sure Thomas can comment on, when he talks about Southminster's Embrace Care, but most companies, some of them don't even do it anymore because there's some state regulations. So they have to be able to get, I think it's 6 hours of sleep, and they have to be able to have their own sleeping space and bathroom. But they could potentially stay as a live-in for the weekend. There are companies that do live-in situations with those stipulations of being able to have a certain amount of sleep. I think that's a state reg that says that.
Okay.
So it can be, to answer your question, it can be the same person as long as they have those sleep and wake hours.
Oh.
Thomas, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to say some companies will do live-ins, like you just mentioned, where you'll have one person for a day or two. Or other companies who don't do live-ins, they might be able to do, you would have 2 people for the entire weekend. They could do 12-hour shifts or 16-hour shifts. So it is a way to get care without having a lot of people in your home. It's just a matter of, is it going to be one person or maybe 2 people? So.
Thank you.
Question. How do you broach the subject of a weekend away, or say a 48-hour period away with your loved one for the first time?
Robyn,
I can speak. Yeah, I mean, I'll give it a go. It's very, very dependent on the cognitive awareness of your loved one. That is a big piece of it. So some people have the awareness to understand the entire situation, and it's more of a safety and mobility concern. And, in that sense, we should be part of a discussion together and talking about why it's important medically for someone to have a break, but also to be able to fill up their cup, to get some rest, and to have somebody be there with you so you're safe and can be very, well taken care of. But let's work together to find somebody that you'd feel very comfortable with. We're not going to kind of do this if we're not all on the same page. So it can take some time, but if somebody can be involved in the process, that's a different story. Other times we really want people to be in agreement, be on the same page, but that understanding the big picture is very difficult for some folks who have, for example, a more moderate or advanced dementia. And in that sense, the idea of what next weekend or what 48 hours actually means can be a difficult thing to understand. And so we don't always need to go in necessarily to detail too far ahead, because that can be really distressing and not calming. So it really depends on the situation. If people, understand what 2 days is, and we can, engage things and put on the calendar. If not, it can oftentimes be more distressing than not. So if you're comfortable with it and we go and we kind of anticipate what we can, you can talk about it with the medical team. If we feel like there's a high level of anxiety or agitation when you're away from somebody, we might want to look at some options with their medical regimen, make sure things are well managed before you go. So it's really very individual based on the situation. But I would encourage you to talk about it with your provider to kind of let us assess what's the likelihood that somebody's going to kind of ease into this pretty well. Most people do better than we think, to be honest.
We have a question in the chat. Can you share any methods you may have had success with that involves directional or instructional transitions, like eating or going to the bathroom, standing and sitting, that caregivers may encounter as the disease progresses?
That's a really good question. And I think everybody has different techniques. And I'll give you an example. I saw a caregiver do it the other day. She said to the client, we were all having dinner together. We were going out for his birthday. And she said to him, "Do you need to go to the bathroom? I'm going to go to the bathroom." And no, she said, "Do you need to go to the bathroom?" He was like, "No, I don't need to go to the bathroom." The other caregiver said to him, "I'm going to go to the bathroom. Let's go wash, maybe you can go, we'll go wash your hands. I need to go too. So let's go wash your hands." That's one way of doing it for someone who's more, just doesn't want to do it. Now, for someone who physically has the motor planning problem of standing, getting to the bathroom, the more instructions you give them, the worse off they're going to be. So I try to make it as automatic as I can. And it might be just, let's go to the bathroom. And it might be just a little tug of the arm, not pulling of the arm, but just a little cue, just to let them know, let's go to the bathroom. I've seen, eating, it may be putting the utensil in front of them, putting their hand on the utensil. Sometimes they will also imitate what you do. So having eating as a family, like you normally would, to me is important. I always don't like to see caregivers just put food in front of an individual and have them sit and eat by themselves. I like to see them sit down and eat with them. I've watched families, one of my friends that actually, his father was at the table. He asked, "Did you want anything to eat?" And the father said, "No." Well, he made some cheese and crackers, put the cheese and crackers in front of him on the table, and the father began to eat it. So a lot of it is more automatic as you can make it seem, the better. I've also seen, like, for example, I know bathing is always an issue, or can be an issue. And things like just starting with little parts first. So, let's just wash our hands so that we can eat dinner, or, let's just, oh, your socks are dirty. Let's just take your socks off now. Oh, you have some, your skin's really dry. Let me wash your feet and, put some lotion on them. So little steps without a lot of instruction, to me, is the best way to get people to transition from one movement to the next.
I would agree, all that. Okay, curious to hear ideas about recreational activities as cognitive ability declines and mobility becomes challenging. That is an excellent, I love that you're asking that question, because there really are a lot of things that we can do. And I'm sure that on the spot, it'll be difficult for me to come up with all of them today, but there are, thinking about people's senses. People do not like to get overwhelmed or be in a loud and crowded environment. So the hidden gems around a place like Charlotte, and this can translate to other areas, are things that we used to do maybe when we were younger and kind of forgot about it. So instead of like walking through a mall, thinking about sitting on a park bench and bringing some bread and throwing it to the ducks. Anything around animals is wonderful because people really get a kick out of it. It's so peaceful and calming. Doing things like walking through a museum, if people enjoy on a quiet day, there's no one there. Unfortunately, the arts are kind of quiet these days, but that might be a nice, safe and low risk with the pandemic way to kind of be inside and looking at some beautiful art. Sitting in and a lot of people really enjoy helping and contributing. Everybody needs to feel a purpose, and people can contribute a lot throughout their condition. This doesn't mean that once you get diagnosed, you can't help. And so we have some techniques in the office. For instance, we have a box of washcloths that we may bring into somebody and ask if, I may say that I didn't get a chance to finish this today. Would you mind helping me? And for people to sit there and do a tactile, repetitive, and what feels like a purposeful activity that can be helpful, even if I didn't necessarily need the washcloths folded, helping them feel needed is an excellent way. And there's no right or wrong to that kind of activity. Some gentlemen, we've gotten like nuts and bolts, a pile of them, and asked them to organize the toolbox and gave them like a sectioned toolbox so they can kind of organize it. There's no right or wrong to an activity like that. It feels familiar, it feels fun and good. And so those are the kind of things that we tap into, whether it's a small outing, getting an ice cream cone and a haircut, whether it's doing something in the home like balling socks, stuffing envelopes, stamping cards for children in a hospital. There's lots of ideas, ways that we can kind of help people feel like they're contributing and actually do contribute. I mean, it's not just making them feel that way, but it really is a way to keep people involved. I'm sure, Kelly, you have a million more examples.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of helping people find purpose. If it might be making sandwiches for a homeless shelter where it's just peanut butter and jelly, and that's sometimes, is something people can certainly do. Packing up little overnight packets for room in the inn is another something that people can do pretty easily. I love to find every opportunity to exercise. So there are some exercise programs out there. One is called Otego. I know there are several people, and it's a evidence-based balance program, I think. Of course, rock steady boxing I love. And a lot of people will tell me, and I don't know if it's true or not, but a lot of people will tell me that, I can't do rock steady boxing. I'm not high functioning enough. But rock steady boxing is designed to be done from a sitting position or a standing position. And there are some trainers out there who do rock steady boxing just personally as opposed to just a class. I love the idea of a class because I think it's because of the socialization aspect. But I love any opportunity to exercise, get outside, be with nature when the weather is nice, of course. McGill Rose Garden is another great little place in town. Freedom Park, those are areas that there's the greenway system is impeccable. It's amazing right now, and they're fairly flat. So if there's someone who's using a walker with a seat, that's a great place to use a walker with a seat.
We have 2 new questions in the chat. One is, what about moving to a new home? We're moving to an independent continuing care community soon after 35 years in our home.
I think it's great. I think that it went, and I wonder if this is a person moving as a couple, because I think you will find that it's much easier to move as a couple to a new place than as a single person. So I'm glad that they're making that decision early on to do that. And, I think the key is getting rid of clutter. Don't try to take your 3,000 square foot home and pack it into a 1,000 square foot apartment. Starting a routine from the beginning. So this is mealtime. This is where we go for exercise. There's exercise class 3 times a week. Let's go do that 3 times a week. It's a matter of making sure that, you have the support. There's nothing wrong with when you move to a continuing care community. If you needed someone to come by and do a medication reminder once a day, that's a great time to go ahead and start that as well. I applaud you, and I wish you good luck. And, I think you'll find that you'll be engaged with others a lot differently and a lot more, hopefully. But I encourage you to take that step out of your apartment and not stay in your apartment all the time, and enjoy what there is. To remember that this place is your living room, your apartment is your sleeping space. But I think to your point, yes, a move is going to be a change, a bit of a stressor, but having a moving company come, if you can do it, I would suggest having a moving company come pack you and unpack you, so that everything is almost turnkey when you walk in, so you don't have to deal with the chaos of unpacking. Would not expect someone who has, a memory deficit to be able to help with the packing. I think that's something that you probably want to kind of relieve that stress from that individual.
And I think that also, when it comes to purging items, a lot of choices make people very anxious. So really kind of making that as executive decisions with, and maybe it's presenting 2 items, one of which we're taking, giving someone a choice of 2, rather than what in this room do we need to do, or here's a box to go through. Can be, oh, there's a cat, exciting. But that can be a way for someone to feel involved, but not overwhelmed. It can be a lot to ask somebody with cognitive difficulty to make those big decisions. It's a lot for anybody to make those decisions. But and also I was thinking that when you move, if people have been hesitant to accept a home service, that could be a time to explain that's kind of part of what they offer here. So when you move, they allow somebody to come in once a day and get to know us, check medicines, things like that. And that just might be something people accept off the bat with a change in situation.
Yeah, you can always have a little bit of a therapeutic fib, and so require this when we move in to do it this way.
Mm-hmm.
That's another option. I love, someone mentioned, where can you find Rocksteady Boxing? Why don't we put those, I can give you some choices maybe on the website, Melanie.
Okay, yeah. If you want to send me a list of
yeah.
any
There's
links that might be helpful.
places that offer it here in town.
Well, I asked that question, Ms. Jane Dennis, and I'm curious where the one-on-one is versus a class.
Oh, the one-on-one is at Just Workout. His name is Kelly. And it's over there off Latrobe, off Wendover, behind the, Kelly Evans is his name, behind the Home Depot place. So he's a private trainer. So he's a personal trainer, and he has a certification in Rocksteady Boxing.
Okay.
I love the comment Lori made about having a friend who likes to organize puzzles by color. And that's exactly the kind of activities that can make someone enjoy it, feel successful. We have to just realize we throw the rules out. We don't need, if we're going to color, we don't want a picture that already has lines that we need to stay inside. We bring out the big white piece of paper and let it be free for all, because there's no right or wrong. And so if it's organizing puzzle pieces by color, fantastic. Whether or not they get assembled into a puzzle is not the point. That's still a cognitive exercise and something that's keeping someone, exerting energy, stimulating their mind, and feeling good about what they're contributing. So I think that's great.
There's also a sticker by number. There's some sticker by number books that are really cool. Actually, some can be quite intricate. And a good place to find those, as well as adult coloring books, is Ollie's. If you ever go to Ollie's in Matthews, they have all sorts of things at a really inexpensive price.
I received one here, a direct message with a good question. Any things to keep an eye out for if a patient goes on vacation with a caregiver? Changes in environment and traveling, can that deteriorate a condition?
It's a great question. I can talk to you a couple things on that. With traveling, yes, I would, first of all, I would set your expectations much differently and reduce them from what maybe the last trip looked like, because at every stage, things are a different, you'll encounter a different challenge. So first of all, it's kind of going into this with a fresh set of eyes. We want to incorporate things like a lot of rest and shorter days, hydrating really well. Lots of people forget to drink when they're on vacation. And also safety measures are so important. So whether it's an airport or you're driving and doing a road trip, and there'll be rest stops and bathrooms, it's very important for people to have ID on them. I like ID bracelets with the care partner's name and phone number and the patient's name and date of birth, just in case they got separated, but also always keeping an eye on someone. So if they went into an airport bathroom, literally standing outside the bathroom and eyes on them when they come out. It doesn't take 2 seconds for people to get disoriented in a place like that and think that they were supposed to meet you somewhere and kind of scamper off a little bit. So I think the most important things are rest, hydrating, keeping the days short, reducing expectations, and safety. Those are the big ones that we talk about. And day trips and shorter things can also, be a nice change of pace. Like a day trip to a park could take the place of a weekend away if it became that difficult. But with some things in place, it often work for folks. We just need to kind of change our perspective a little bit.
And I think too, some folks talk about not remembering the event that they went to or had happened. I think that what's important to note is, are they happy in the moment and living in the moment? And to me, that's a successful.
Mm-hmm.
Someone has a question about Petra. Thank you. About Medicaid and communities with Medicaid. So it is a challenge. Particularly, what happens is, without getting into too much detail, there's 2 different pots of Medicaid. There's long-term care Medicaid, which is the Medicaid that you would use in skilled nursing, and there's special assistance Medicaid, which is the Medicaid that you use in assisted living. The income limits for assisted living, which is what most memory cares are, assisted living memory care. So they're called a special care unit, but there can be individuals that have cognitive issues who are in assisted living. So you're kind of looking at both scenarios. The monthly income limit for assisted living is less than the monthly income limit for special assistance, and I keep it above my desk because it's like, I think it's $1,515 per month for a special care unit, which would be more memory care. And for assisted living, it's $1,182. So if you make $2,000 a month, you don't qualify for special assistance Medicaid. You could qualify for long-term care Medicaid, which is Medicaid and skilled nursing. There are some programs out there that, there's one called PACE that is their goal is to keep people in their home, and that's a Medicaid program. So that's something that you might want to consider. There are some other programs that I honestly am not as familiar with that we might be able to provide some links with later. It's called DTAP.
CDAP, I think.
CDAP, yeah. It's called the CAPS program, and it's called Money Follows the Person. It's a way to help pay family members for providing care, as well as providing some care from caregivers as well. So, I will tell you, I'm not as versed in that piece of it as I am just the community piece of Medicaid. So it's a challenge. I will tell you, it is a challenge. There's also a number that you can call, and I'll provide it in your chat box. It's called Just One Call. Oh gosh, I'm hitting the bullet points.
And that's a Mecklenburg County line of social services that's manned by social workers. And I encourage everybody to give that a call and understand what resources are available regardless of income level for caregivers and patients. They have things like free nutritional supplements delivered to your house, free undergarments, like depends. These are things that are expensive. And if money can be put towards other things because there are county benefits for some items, that could help. They can get on wait lists for Medicaid, AIDS in Home, and give you other resources too.
Yeah, basically you call them and you tell them what you're looking for and they can direct you to a right person. Their goal is to not keep passing the buck. Their goal is to get you to a live person, not another machine. You know, as far as the assisted living communities that accept special assistance Medicaid, there are some. You will find them listed. There's a couple of magazines around town. You will find them listed. But basically, and some of them will require a spin down time period, which means you have to pay privately at the full rate before you can qualify for Medicaid. So it takes a bit of planning. But there are some out there, and I've successfully helped people move to several.
My husband really does not like the Rock City boxing class. I loved it. I think it's great. But so what are your suggestions of what type of things to do in place of attending a Rock City boxing class to promote exercise and mobility?
Would he consider like a personal trainer?
But yeah, I think so. That's why I'm the one that asked you about the one-on-one.
Yeah. I mean, that would be one thing. And then, you know, if he would do, there's a lot of different, there's some, if he likes to swim, there's pool exercise classes that are great. You know, the basic thing to me with Parkinson's is movement, any type of reciprocal movement that involves, you know, more than one, you know, a lot of eye-hand coordination types of activities. You know, it depends on what his mobility is. Ping pong, you know, if he could do something like that. I think Southminster has a dance program. Is it the tango, I think is what it is. And that is open to the community. The Parkinson's Association, I follow them on, I get email updates from them, and sometimes they have some exercise programs as well that you might want to look into. But, you know, in my opinion, the biggest thing with Parkinson's is just movement of any kind.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I am glad that you mentioned Southminster, because that nicely transitions us into an introduction of Thomas Brewer, who's with Southminster. We're thrilled to intensify our partnership with Southminster this year with some satellite clinic hours for residents, and later this summer we'll be opening those hours to anyone who prefers that location. And Thomas represents Embrace Care, who has supported this Take Charge Live program from its beginning. So Thomas, you want to tell us a little bit about Embrace?
Yeah, thank you. Embrace Care is, again, we are based out of Southminster, which for those of you not familiar, we are a continuing care retirement community here in Charlotte. So we have independent living, assisted living, and skilled nursing on campus. We have about 450 individuals who call Southminster home. But we also are a home care provider, and we're not just a home care provider for our residents. We actually provide home care off campus for individuals who aren't ready to make a move to a community or don't want to move to a community and you want to age in place. We provide CNAs and companions in the home as little as 4 hours per day, all the way up to 24 hours a day. So we can be very flexible in what we offer. We've been around for about 12 years now. So, you know, if you, or even if you just need support as a caregiver, like we talked about today, a lot of times we're in the home simply to provide relief or respite care. So yeah, as little as 4 hours a day. You can go to our website, southminster.org, and click on home care, and you can pull up all kinds of information about us. But we're happy to support this, and we're glad to have Memory and Movement on site now for about just over a month now, I think, right? A month or two.
Yeah, it's going really well.
Very good. So thank you.
Thanks again for joining us, and we hope to see you next month live from the new building. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much to Kelly, Robyn, and Thomas.